My next guest wrote about this time as a Green Beret in Afghanistan in his book, Warrior Diplomat. In his book, he laid out how the United States was able to defeat the insurgency and explain the complexities in war. He also worked as a policy advisor to former Vice President Dick Cheney. Joining us right now, Florida Congressman Green Beret Michael Waltz. Congressman, welcome. I'm standing in front of the map intentionally. I know you've been studying this as well as working hard to get aid in. First off, as I look at this map, where are your eyes drawn?
Well, Brian, you know, Putin is still executing his original plan. And if you start in the east, in the Donbass, it's important to understand that about 70% of the Ukrainian army was focused in that very eastern area where they've been doing trench warfare since 2014, since the original Russian invasion, all the way over there in the east. So what Putin has attempted to do through Kharkiv is to outflank those forces, to cut them off. And that's why he's putting so much effort into Kharkiv in the north, so that he can surround the majority of the Ukrainian army and cut them off from Kyiv. We know what's happening in terms of the Russians trying to surround Kyiv, drop the government, and put their own puppet government in place. But the thing that I'm watching, two things that I'm really watching closely right now. One is the battle for Odessa. If the Russians take Mariupol and Odessa, they have essentially turned Ukraine into a landlocked country, cut them off from the Black Sea, and will further devastate their economy. And it's something that Putin has always wanted, which was full access to the Black Sea. The other thing is the Dnieper River, which runs north to south from Kyiv all the way straight down the middle of the country. And ethnically, that is important because east of the river is primarily ethnic Russians, west of the river primarily ethnic Ukrainians. I just can't imagine that Putin has the forces, and now that he's been really slowed down, the wherewithal to occupy west of the river. Now, so at the end of the day, I think he stops at the river and turns it into a rump country that he tries to control.
Very interesting if he tries to do that. It's kind of interesting because the one thing everybody has in common, they all don't like him, and they all don't want to be Russian. They all don't want any part of their system. They are looking west, and the European Union is ready to welcome them, and I would imagine NATO eventually too, because Zelensky has control of not just Ukraine, he has control of the NATO alliance and EU, and he has transfixed the rest of the world. I got to bring it to an area. Do you know that Kherson is the one city that's been taken over? Do you know they're already protesting Russian presence in Kherson? And I realize Odessa is this beautiful beachside community, and I know that there's warships here, and I know they're coming here. But Congressman, guess what? There's going to be a fight here, and what's left of the Ukrainian Navy is ready to go. The question is there anything you can do to block?
Yeah, so, you know, the frustrating thing, Brian, is when I was out there last year, the Ukrainians were begging for two things: Stinger anti-aircraft missiles, which they didn't start getting from the administration until last week, and Harpoon anti-ship missiles so that they could protect Odessa, because that is their last major port. It's critical to their economy, and they absolutely have to keep it, and I expect them to do everything they can. The last thing on Zelensky, he has to stay alive, Brian. He's become a symbol of the resistance, and every time he goes on the internet, every time he comes on air and holds some type of press conference, the Russians are trying to geolocate him and take him out. I expect that the Ukrainian government, if Kyiv falls, will fall back to Lviv, which is on the Polish border. That's where Lucas Tomlinson is, major European city, and heavy-duty nationalistic Ukrainian presence there, and also very mountainous, where I think you'll be able to stage an insurgency and keep the Ukraine dream alive.
All right, so you know about urban warfare, you know about the difficulties. So if you think they're coming for Kyiv right now, and they haven't ringed it yet, I understand. They haven't ringed it yet, but they want to. And if they are going to leave Kharkiv, which I hear they're going to just leave it and keep shelling it, but leave it the bulk, if they're going to head over here, there are certain things that the Ukrainian people can do right now to get ready. What are they?
Well, you know, what you're going to find is the rubble from the shelling, from the Russian shelling, will become defensive barriers and will become a death trap for Russian armor. Russian tanks are most vulnerable from the top, Brian, and from the rear. Firing those anti-tank weapons down from those high-rise buildings on top of the thin Russian armor, and then also using the subway systems, sewers, and tunnels to pop up in the rear. The infantry and resistance fighters with the right anti-tank weapons can do a lot of damage to Russian tanks. Right. And then they're going to go after the supply lines. It takes a lot of fuel, ammunition, and parts to keep that many tanks, artillery, and armored personnel carriers moving. Those supply lines are vulnerable, and I expect the resistance to go after those next.
I believe they're getting some positive signs. At Zelensky's conversation today with you guys, almost 300 lawmakers on a Saturday show up for a Zoom call. Pretty amazing. I hear that the determination for Americans and our partners to get them arms and supplies has never been higher. Real quick, would you characterize it the same way?
Oh, absolutely. It's bipartisan. In fact, when I was out there last year, the Democrats on the trip were demanding that they get more arms before the invasion back then. But, Brian, my question is, Congress went on a weekend break this weekend. I know. Why didn't they vote on the $10 billion package? Why didn't Speaker Pelosi have it on the floor? Why don't we have that same sense of urgency? Every day, every hour matters in terms of helping the Ukrainian resistance. And those arms should be flowing faster. They should be more sophisticated, and we need more of them. What the administration's providing is a drop in the bucket in terms of the Ukrainian need.
Right. My hope is that we'll realize the urgency and get it done. And first and foremost, get those MiGs and get that Air Force going, because they do have the pilots. Congressman Mike Waltz, if anybody's going to get it done, it's going to be you. Thanks so much for your expertise.
All right. Thank you, Brian.
You got it.